Many people stay busy preparing for change long enough to avoid changing. Welcome back. The third law of atomic habits is make it easy, and it cuts directly against the fantasy that progress is mostly about intensity. James Clear wants you to respect friction. If something is hard to start, complicated to repeat, or dependent on perfect conditions, it will be fragile no matter how inspiring the plan looked when you wrote it. He begins by separating motion from action. Motion feels productive. Researching, outlining, planning, comparing tools, reorganizing, downloading templates, buying supplies, watching one more video about how to begin. Action is what actually produces a result. You write the page. You do the workout. You make the sales call. You sit down and practice. The reason people get trapped in motion is obvious once Clear says it. Motion is safer. It allows the feeling of progress without the emotional risk of outcome. If I'm still planning, I cannot yet fail publicly. If I'm still optimizing my note-taking app, I do not need to confront whether I'm actually studying. Motion flatters the ego while postponing the scoreboard. That is why repetition matters more than the myth of perfect preparation. Habits are installed through reps. You learn the shape of the behavior by doing it, not by thinking about doing it with remarkable sophistication. The first draft of any useful habit is usually clumsy. The point is not elegance. The point is frequency. Clear then introduces the law of least effort. Human beings naturally gravitate toward the option that costs less energy. This is not a moral defect. It is a reality. The environment pushes behavior toward whatever path has the least resistance. If the good habit has 10 steps and the bad habit has 1 tap, the bad habit is already ahead before your higher values enter the room. This is why friction is such a powerful tool. Increase it for the habit you want less. Reduce it for the habit you want more. Put the guitar on a stand, not in the case. Prepare the workout closed the night before. Keep the healthy food visible. Move the TV remote farther away. Log out of the social app. Freeze the card. Leave the document open. The brain may still resist, but now resistance has less structural support. The book does not romanticize effort for its own sake. Clear is not saying meaningful work should always feel easy. He is saying the starting ritual should be easy enough that the behavior can begin before excuses multiply. The job is not to eliminate all effort. The job is to eliminate unnecessary effort at the moment of launch. That is where the 2-minute rule becomes so useful. Scale the habit down to the version that takes 2 minutes or less. Read before bed becomes read 1 page. Do yoga becomes take out the mat. Study every night becomes open the notes. Run 3 miles becomes put on your running shoes. The first version should feel almost too easy. This bothers some ambitious people because it sounds trivial. They confuse the gateway with the destination. The 2-minute version is not the full habit. It is the entry point that makes the full habit easier to begin. A ritual of showing up matters because consistency grows from identity, and identity is strengthened every time you become the sort of person who starts. Clear's logic here is subtle and strong. A habit must be established before it can be optimized. People often try to perfect a routine they have not yet repeated. That is backwards. First, make it repeatable. Then make it better. First, become the type of person who sits down to write. Later, worry about how polished the writing session is. He also introduces commitment devices, which are wonderfully unromantic and therefore effective. If you know your future self is slippery, then bind that future self a little. Pay for the class in advance. Set automatic savings. Leave the phone outside the bedroom. Use app blockers. Put junk food in a place that requires effort to access. Build one-time choices that make repeated good decisions easier. This is not distrust of the self so much as realistic self-knowledge. Future you is not a separate species of wise monk. Future you often feels tired, bored, lonely, stressed, or persuasive in exactly the wrong direction. Commitment devices are structural honesty. They admit that good intentions decay when the moment gets uncomfortable. There is also a valuable lesson here about scaling difficulty. Clear does not say every habit should stay tiny forever. He says the starting point should be easy enough to survive inconsistency. Once the pattern is real, it can expand. But people who skip this phase often end up in the familiar loop. Enthusiasm, overcommitment, missed day, guilt collapse. Making it easy also protects self-trust. If every plan you make is too big for your current life, you keep teaching yourself that your promises do not stick. Smaller, reliable actions may look less exciting, but they are better raw material for confidence. Confidence built from evidence is sturdier than confidence built from intention. The third law, therefore, forces a blunt question. What exactly is too hard in your current setup? Not in a dramatic existential sense. In a practical sense. Is the workout too hard to start because the clothes are not ready? Is the reading habit too hard because the phone is easier? Is the writing habit too hard because the session begins with too much ambiguity? Is the saving habit too hard because the transfer is manual and easy to postpone? Once the friction is visible, the plan becomes clearer. Reduce steps, reduce decisions, reduce setup, reduce the need to negotiate with yourself. Good systems are often boring in this way. They turn future action into the path of least resistance instead of the path of noble struggle. This is also why Clear values automation. A habit that can be scheduled, preloaded, or constrained by default no longer asks for fresh heroics every time. The more you can rely on design, the less you have to rely on whatever emotional weather happens to pass through at 7:30 p.m. Thank you for staying with part 4. Next, we move into the fourth law, make it satisfying, where Clear tackles reinforcement directly. Immediate rewards, habit tracking, never miss twice, and why consistency becomes much easier when the brain gets a visible signal that the effort counts. Final close. The habit that wins is often not the one with the most inspiring goal. It is the one with the least friction at the exact moment a human being has to begin.